Hello, this is Dr. Daniel Van Ingen with this week's parenting podcast, Does Dad Change? Do People Change? At the core of my work in psychology is this question: do people change? Some people come to my practice or to another therapist and they want warmth, compassion, and validation for another person who is not changing. But at the end of the day, all we can change is ourselves. In recent months, I've helped a number of people try to make changes in their life. And some of them have experienced change even before I met them. So I've seen a number of changes. Interestingly, a therapist once told a woman, "Men never change." How could a person come to this conclusion? Yes, we are the sum total of our own personal experiences. So in this therapist's life, maybe her partner or husband never changed, and her father didn't change. But a therapist sees a lot of people. A therapist probably has a broad perspective, you would think. How could one make that comment? Was it a psychological technique specifically targeted toward the client? If so, why encourage that belief to a client? Or did the therapist truly believe that men don't change? And why do other therapists that I talk to actually hold other beliefs? One of my close colleagues was in a relationship with a man who never changed. Actually, she says he changed for the worse over the course of 8 years. Despite this experience, she has seen a ton of change and believes that men and women change. In my practice, I have talked with thousands of people who have changed. Many of them changed, like I said, before I talked to them. Here's a handful of examples of people that I've talked to recently who have experienced change in their life. I talked to a man who lost 120 pounds. I talked to a man who used to avoid conflict with his wife and who is now staying in conversations, even if he perceives her to be more intense than he would like when it comes to a concerning issue. I talked to a man who would let his friend slap his face if he used pornography. He was honest with his friend, and after a few hard hits, he found this to be an effective strategy. He hasn't used porn for 3 months so far as of this podcast. I've seen a man go from being a regular heroin user, $1,000 a day, to being a great dad, a disciplined and engaging single dad who has the majority of custody time with his kids. I've seen a man with a herniated disc go from extreme pain with limited movement to daily exercise because of lifestyle changes. I've seen a man go from depending on Xanax 3 times a day for 8 years to now having plans to skydive. So I have seen some amazing changes. Here's the bottom line. People change. What's interesting is, the chronic nature of addiction means that for some people, relapse or return to drug use after an attempt to stop can be part of the process. I knew someone who engaged in addictive behavior and bad habits from 2013 to 2016. He went in for treatment and experienced significant changes in 2017. He had one slip up in the fall of 2018. It leads us to this. He then maintained sobriety from those bad habits until today. But it leads us to this question. Does relapse mean treatment has failed? Does a relapse mean that change hasn't happened? And the answer is no. The chronic nature of bad habits means that for some people, relapse or return to the bad habit after an attempt to stop can be part of the process. And we can be talking about any kinds of behaviors here. Anything that people want to change in their life, from conflict avoidance to anger eruptions to impatience with their children to Vietnam veterans engaging in road rages when they're driving. I mean, we can be talking about any kinds of behaviors: drugs, alcohol, pornography, sexting, video game addiction, gambling, ice cream, pie, any sugar item, cigarettes, any kind of substance abuse. I mean, let's talk about change when it comes to drug use. Does relapse to drug use mean treatment has failed? And the answer is the same here. The answer is no. The chronic nature of addiction means that for some people, relapse or return to drug use after an attempt to stop can be part of the process, but newer treatments are designed to help with the relapse prevention. But again, back to the question, does a relapse mean that change requires instant change? Does it require instant change? You know, when I've worked with couples and a man has an anger problem over a period of time, and then, over time he worked hard on the anger problem, and maybe he had 2 anger eruptions last year and 1 this year, up until last week. And then at his anger, in response to his anger problem last week, if his partner gets exasperated, she throws her hands in the air and says, "See, he never changes." Does this conclusion that he never changes, does that help the situation? The answer is no, absolutely not. So what does change look like? Sometimes change is sudden. Sometimes to make changes in our lives, we need to make radical changes. We need to make radical changes. And so, it's interesting, Maxwell Maltz, he was a plastic surgeon in the 1950s. He began noticing a strange pattern among his patients. He'd perform an operation like a nose job, for example, and he found that it would take the patient about 21 days to get used to seeing his new face. So, from there it then went to people like Zig Ziglar, who said, it takes 21 days to change and form a new habit. So, research, and then this went on, and motivational speakers would come out and over the last several decades, the 21-day habit. I often have clients who reference 21 days to make changes, to form a new habit. So does it take only 21 days to change and form a new habit? So research hasn't supported this for serious habits, like some of those that I mentioned. But, you can apply this to your life. Run for 21 straight days. Did you form a habit? Yes, you changed. Besides, many trainers are concerned about injury, overworking, knees and feet will hurt, unless you're young. But you did, and so if you take those necessary precautions in terms of stretching and maybe a day off or 2, but the point is, yes, you changed. To-do lists. To-do lists are completed by spies, detectives, many successful people. And it has shown to improve sleep, and you get more stuff done. So you do it at night, and research shows you can only really keep track of 4 things on your mind at any one time. People who do to-do lists, it helps freeze them up. If rumination or worry keeps them up, we know that to-do lists can help. To-do lists, doing them before you go to bed for the next day, it improves sleep. People get more stuff done. Do it for 21 days. Did you form a habit if you did it every night for 21 days? Yes, you changed. Research hasn't supported this for serious habits. It usually takes 3 to 7 years to change bad habits. But can people quit cold turkey? Yeah, I've seen lots of people. And some people just are not ready to change. I think there's 3 key questions when it comes to change. Do I understand? Am I capable? And am I willing? And some tobacco cessation programs, some research has been shown that demonstrated tailored interventions for smoking cessation. They have shown that 80% of individuals in these programs were not ready to quit. So now change, I think research has shown tailoring matters. And you need to tailor, a program needs to be tailored towards a particular individual. But the stages of change, they really come out of the trans-theoretical model. And it's really interesting to look at some of the stages of change. So a person who is in the pre-contemplation stage, they're just not ready to change. And some people may be unaware. It really requires patience around a person, because a person may be unaware that change is needed in their life. They get home from work and they just get on the video games for 3-4 hours, and they just may be unaware that this is causing problems in their marriage. It's causing problems in their fitness. It's causing long-term problems for their heart because they have a limited movement. They have a sitting job at work. And so they're in the pre-contemplation stage. The next stage is the contemplation stage. They're all of a sudden now they're becoming aware. Some things can move them, and they have a plan of action. Maybe they're going to join a gym. Maybe they're going to consult a counselor. Maybe they're going to talk to their physician. And then the third stage is the action stage. After contemplation is the preparation. And so the contemplation is now they're starting to become aware. They start to think about the pros and cons. And then the preparation, they start taking some steps like consulting or joining a gym. And then there's the action stage. And then finally maintenance. And this is the stage in which people have made specific modifications in their lifestyles, and they're working to prevent relapse. And after 12 months of continuous abstinence, 43% of individuals return to regular smoking, as an example. So those are the stages of change. It takes time. Now, some people change. I'm a big advocate for radical changes. Lately, I've encouraged significant hobby changes. I've encouraged, in our clinic, we formed a skydiving therapy and resilience group. I was talking to one of my clients recently who was experiencing depression, and I said, look, he's trying to look at the medications. And because of the tailored interventions that were needed, he needed a radical change in his life. Radical change. And I often look at 8 areas, and I say these on a regular basis: faith, fitness, friends, hobbies, interests, nutrition, sleep, and managing media exposure. Managing media exposure can be a change. Turning off the TV, turning off Netflix. If you were entertained to the max last year during the pandemic, maybe 2021 is about turning off the TV for 21 days. But the key question is this: what are you changing in your life? What is the evidence of your change? And why am I bringing this up in a parenting podcast? First of all, let me answer these questions. Does dad change? Absolutely. Do people change? Absolutely. And why am I talking about this on this parenting podcast? I think one of the greatest gifts we can give our children is this: that as parents, we change. What do you need to change in your life? Some of the best change agents, some of the people who make the biggest difference in this world, are people who change themselves. This is Dr. Daniel Van Ingen with this week's Parenting Podcast. The answer to does dad change? Do people change? The answer is yes. Absolutely.